Okay. Yeah. So good evening, good afternoon, from wherever you are. And welcome to Connect Africa once again. We are here to discuss the important issues. One of the things that we are trying to do is, of course, to create awareness, to empower ourselves and our brothers and sisters with information, then we know how to act and what to do, in order to fight what we have to fight, because the struggle is not over yet. So today's topic is what are the signs and symptoms or characteristics of a neo-colonial agent in Africa. It could be a leader that he sits as a president or a prime minister. It could be just a minister. It could be just one of those big entrepreneurs who is sponsoring the votes, the election, or whatever, who's backing those people behind. But what are those signs that people have to pay attention? So to discuss here, we have our brothers here. I will just go according to what the camera shows me. Kwame Gonza, Pan-African, all of them Pan-Africanist, Lambert Ibitu from Uganda, and Lansana Fof, or you go by Case Fof this time?
Yeah, yes. Well,
Okay, Case Pop. Okay, so from Senegal, and Kwame is from Ghana, but they're all Pan Africanists and they have been doing this, each of them by writing on YouTube. They have been doing this. We just came together on this session. Welcome, my brothers.
Thank you, Mallet. Thank you so much.
It's good to
yeah,
be
thank
here.
you, sister.
Very good, then. Okay, so I will pose a question, for each one of you you can respond. Maybe I think it's getting more late for Lambert than us, so we will start maybe with Lambert. So, what are, as an ordinary African, what are the things that I can look at for a leader in my country or in Africa, that he or she is working for a colonial, neo-colonial, or who are trying to impose neo-colonialism on their nation, under the disguise of Pan-Africanism, because most of the time we hear them doing their sweet talk to the people, but behind the curtain they are doing something else. So just help us to understand what are the characteristics that we should look at.
Uh,
Brother Lambert.
thank you, Mallet, for this opportunity. It's always a pleasure to be having this kind of discussions, and it's good to have my colleagues Gonza and Case. I think I'm meeting Case for the first time, but I've been on a number of platforms with Gonza. Now, to delve immediately into your question, I want first to make it known to us that when we speak of neo-colonial agents in Africa, we must appreciate that they are not only within the ranks of the governments in power, but the complexity of the neo-colonial blueprint to keep Africa, um, um, co- um, I mean, to keep Africa under their control extends even to opposition elements within given countries, and not only in government, but in the different sectors, in the political and in the economic. But what then are the signs? How then do you tell, for instance, that a given person, whether it's a president, whether it's somebody posturing as a human rights defender within a country, whether it is somebody within opposition and actually trying to get power within a country, because we mustn't limit our thinking to imagining that it's only governments in power that have puppets for the West. We have them even in opposition. So I think the first one, particularly when somebody is in power, and for me, the most obvious one is the fact that you must look at what are the ideals that the West stands for, what the ideals that the US stands for. One of them, their biggest export apparently, is democracy. Now, you're going to look at a country and you're going to see a president of a given country completely doing the opposite of what democracy is, completely going against what the ideals of democracy are, committing crimes that do not completely match with the idea of what democracy is. And yet, while that president does so, the West either turns a blind eye or, in fact, continues to fund and support that kind of leader. That is for me the first clear indicator of a puppet. And there are so many examples. And usually this happens in countries which have resource endowments which the West is looking at exploiting, regardless of whether that person is a Democrat or not. For example, we can take the example of the Congo. You remember the last president, that is Siseko Mobutu. The West willingly looted Congo while allowing Siseko Mobutu to do whatever he wanted to do, to kill, to butcher, and the guy was basically a complete dictator. But the West turned a blind eye. So they overlooked their ideal of democracy and still supported Mobutu. Now, that one is a clear indicator. When you see a president is undemocratic by all standards, and yet the West continues to support them, or rather keeps quiet in the event of all these undemocratic practices, that gives a clear indication that that one president is actually a neo-colonial agent. Because you must understand what is neo-colonialism. And now neo-colonialism has two edges. One is on the political aspect. The other one is on the economic. Now, it's all about exploitation. If you look at it from an economic perspective, they're looking at how do they get what is in Africa. Because we have had so many discussions. We have discussed about how they're exploiting us. When you go to Mali, Niger, Senegal, where Casey comes from, we know that that you have France. France, for example, has the bulk of its military bases within that place, and we know that they are so much interested within that belt between Niger, Mali, Senegal, and we know why. We know that there is uranium which is used to light up about 75% of the bulbs in Paris. Now, so that tells you that the exploitation of resources is very significant, and one of the key things that neocolonialism looks at. Now, when a leader is willing to submit to that and to allow that level of exploitation, then the West is going to overlook democracy, because democracy is not the most important thing so long as people are able to get their resources. So that's number one, and for me the most significant, and it comes in very different ways. Even in Ethiopia, Mallet, you're from Ethiopia. You remember, I don't think the last president was so democratic. That is that was President who?
Meles Zenawi.
Meles Zenawi wasn't exactly democratic, but you know, he somehow had a good working relationship with the West. So they overlooked the democracy, which they believe, which they want to export to us and keep telling us is the most important thing to them. There is nothing that the West does without telling you about democracy. And yet, in the instance of those countries, they overlook it. Now, when you see them overlooking democracy, then you know that one is a colonial agent. They have valued the resources they will get more than their democracy. That is the first. Then the other one, how does this country, the second, how does a given country's economic policies relate with the transnational companies, with the corporations from the West? Look at Uganda. Well, you can take Uganda and most other countries. Most of our big projects of infrastructure are funded and actually constructed by people from the West, or rather from outside a given country. Is it for lack of human knowledge? Is it for lack of skills? Why then do we train? Because I know that we have engineers who are as good as the engineers from China, who are as good as the engineers from Russia, who are as good as, perhaps even better than the engineers from the US. But you will find that big and mega projects, which involve trillions of money, are given to corporations from the West. As we speak right now, the US is sending its army back to Somalia. I posted the other day on my Twitter feed, and I spoke about what the real intentions for me, in my own understanding, of the US is in Somalia. Now, they've posted back their soldiers there, their military there, but the fact is that it is not Al-Shabaab, it's not the rebels that they're going to fight. There is something that these people are obviously looking at. And I also posted an agreement that was previously signed by an American corporation and the minister of Somalia by then, which fortunately at that point, the president Famajo decided to to cancel. But that tells you the interest of the Western corporations in exploiting the resources that are in African countries. Now, depending on the relationship between a given president or leader of a given country, or even a minister, like that particular one in Somalia, you are able to see that these people are operating under the instructions of the West and therefore are colonial agents. Even still in Senegal, in West Africa, the companies that are drilling these resources, uranium and the rest, are actually French-based companies. They are not companies from that place. Now that tells you why would you not only give out your resources, but also have those who are drilling them and digging them up and looting them to be corporations from the West, because they can only be accountable to the governments in the West. You must have a French company exploiting and looting resources from Senegal, from Mali, from Chad, because they must only account to the West, not to the president of that particular country. Now, that is the second dimension, the corporations, and they are so spread out throughout Africa. And it is not for lack or inability of Africans to exploit these resources. So those two significant factors for me are what stand out. There could be, and of course certainly there are other indicators. But then again, like I said, it is not only we can't and shouldn't only look at it from a perspective of the governments in power, because we also understand that the West is so smart and so complex in its operations that sometimes they have, let me give this example. We know of some of the wars that have taken place in the world where the West funded both sides. So why am I bringing this perspective? You have people in government who are certainly serving neo-colonial interests, but also you have some people who are apparently outside of government, but they also serve neo-colonial interests. And in that respect, then comes the third indicator of a neo-colonial agent who may not necessarily be in government. Look at the different African countries. One of the things the West does as a way of keeping the government in power in check and obedient to them and subservient to them is to ensure that they put a balancing force outside of government. And these ones normally come in the name of human rights defenders. Of course, it is true, we have human rights abuses. We have human rights abuses in Africa, which of course we don't want. But we also have human rights abuses in the West. But the way they are going to project the human rights abuses in Africa is that they come up with so-called champions. So you find you have one African in Uganda, a black man, who is propped up by the West to be a political and a balancing force for those in government. You have a so-called human rights defender in Zimbabwe who is supporting, for example, sanctions against his own country. Now, these are political balancing forces, but you must realize that they operate under the tutelage and urging and indeed the funding of the West. How do you know they are agents of the West? Number one, you will always see them attending conferences in the West. Immediately they come into the spotlight, you will see them going for studies in an American university, in an American Institute of Leadership, or something like that. Why do you think that's the case? Because they must go and be indoctrinated. Immediately, you will see the so-called defenders of human rights enlisting foreign lawyers from the US. Now, because you need a contact between you and the State Department. So whether somebody is in government or in opposition, the moment you see somebody apparently claiming to be a champion of human rights, which of course we admit it is true, there are human rights abuses, but that does not mean that somebody has not been put in place by the West and is acting as a neo-colonial agent. Because while human rights abuses are a fact in Africa, while the abuse of human rights exists in Africa, and we wouldn't want to have those rights, they also exist in the West. I could tell you that in terms of human rights abuse, the US, for example, is one of the countries with the highest levels of abuse of human rights. I don't think I have to go into that. Every day you have people being killed. Every day you have policemen are killing black people, whether based on race and all those factors. But when it comes to Africa, you always have what they call champions of human rights. Where are the champions of human rights in the US? But you have them in Africa, and those are the people we are going to listen to. But you see, they exploit our weaknesses, they exploit our failures, and they get somebody who becomes a champion, and then they begin to use that person. So now that is in the field of human rights. But like I said, it's a broad field, and perhaps I'm going to give one last, and that's the fourth one. I want to look at the media itself, because the media itself has become a tool of neo-colonial control for Africa. Um, 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 uh, Let me give you this example. In Uganda, for example, uh, um, you have a local radio station in my village here where I stay, for example, in Uganda, and every evening they stream BBC News to their audience here in Uganda. Now, you must appreciate that the West has understood the power of the media to control the narrative, whatever narrative they have within the African continent. And the records show that the British government, for example, has invested a lot more money to ensure that there is an expansion of 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 broadcasts of the British media in Africa in local languages. They're investing more money to ensure that the BBC can reach and speak in languages local to Africa. Do they love Africa that they are willing to invest much of their money to inform us? What do they want to inform us? But you see, even in the media, you have people, influencers, people with a large following, people whom we see as credible sources of information within Africa, who have been enlisted by the West. So how do you tell that they are working for the West when they begin every time to defend the narrative that is put forward by the West? A clear example has been the recent war in Ukraine. You need to look at the Africans who are driving the clearly biased narrative being put forward by the West. The media houses within Africa, which are driving the Western narrative, that tells you that these people are being funded by the West. Ethiopia actually is a good example. You have seen the people, the so-called journalists. By the way, Africans, I remember the one from from Sudan. At some point, that was who? Nima somebody. That lady, if you were to listen to her or read what she was saying, you could almost conclude that she's actually white, if not only for her color, which is, I think, much darker than mine. That's the only way you could tell that she's actually black. But in everything she was doing, you could almost think that she is Western. And you could imagine why is it, I mean, why this kind of passion? And you could tell, and I can assure you, of late, she has no longer been so active in this, because somehow we managed to demystify her. We managed to expose all the lies. Some of them were so blatant. So when you see an African so-called journalist giving blatant lies against an African country, then you must understand that they are serving Western interests. Do you know why they use them? Because it is easier for us in Africa to listen to a fellow black journalist and believe them. If they use a white man to write, we can simply say, that is a white, what is he speaking about? So they get one of our own, and then they use that person to drive a narrative. Now, when you see somebody do that so blatantly, then you understand that this person has been enlisted by the West and is a neo-colonial agent. I think I will end there, Mallet.
Wow, really. Thank you very much, Brother Lambert. That was really, you were speaking to me. Like I was in it. I was like retrieving all the incidents that happened in the past 2 years in Ethiopia, or, generally in the continent. I was speaking to my brother from Chad yesterday, and when you said, these people, one of the things to identify them is they are the one who attends the conference and the one who study in their university. So this man was saying how Idris Deby was taught by them in France, and, completely became their agent in a way. So that it's not history or something, it's something that we hear every day. Thank you. Yeah, let me pass to our brother Lansana, or Kesfaf, and Aka Kesfaf. So you have to check your YouTube. They have to check your YouTube, so we will put
Okay.
it here. So I will raise the same question.
Yeah.
What are the characteristics that one knows how this neo-colonial agent is operating, or also it could be you can give us an example. I know you do a lot of research, your president Macky Sall and others, maybe I shouldn't call them, I don't know, but whatever you think will explain
Yeah.
the flow Yours.
So thank you, my brother, for all of this knowledge you share with us today. So I really appreciate and I really learned a lot from your speech. So it's something interested. So I will take the case of the of my country, Senegal. We had a president who was Léopold Sédar Senghor. Léopold Sédar Senghor was a French, was a Français, as we say in French. So he's French. So everything he did in his life, he did it in France. So when our country was seeking for independence, they bring Léopold Sédar Senghor to put him in Senegal to be able to control our country because he's somebody who really love France, who love French culture, who love French kind of living. So he's somebody who will serve our interest when he will be president in Senegal. So they fight all the oppositions and they bring it to our country. So they bring him to our country, Senegal. So a second one was Abdou Diouf, who has been prepared in the same mentality as Leopold Sedar Senghor. Abdoulaye Wade also, he's married to the French white girl, So the same thing. He has did his studies in France, so he is in a political idea which is liberalism. So they are all in the system, in the idea of colonial system, liberalism, socialism, or things classic. This is something we call classic in our politic field. So they aren't Pan-Africans. So when we need now is to have Pan-African in our country. But all of these guys having these same ideas as Western guys, so they bring the Western system to our country to maintain our people into poverty and to make themselves become rich and billionaire. So, for example, when we will take the case of Macky Sall, before being president, he has been celebrated by France because he was giving opportunity to France when he was minister before becoming president. So he received many gifts from France before he became president. And after that, they bring him at the moment when Abdoulaye Wade was telling French army to leave our country. So they say, okay, this guy is becoming crazy. He wants our army to leave Senegal. This is something we'll never accept. So in the paper, they agree, they sign, they say, okay, there's no problem. We will retire from your country. There's no problem. So they was preparing Macky Sall. So when Macky Sall came, the first action he did is to bring back France military bases in our country. So this is a characteristic of somebody who has been settled by colonial system. So after that, every uh, partnership between Senegal and France are never in the interest of our country. So French have 80%, we have 10%. For every research, every resources we have to exploit in our country. Oil, there's oil discovered in Senegal. So in the contract, France have 80% and Senegal 10%. In the gold, it is the same. In every resources they found in our country, we have 10%, they have 100% or 19%. So, this is something crazy. They come and they put people in our country who will be there only to represent them. They put black people in our face, but behind these black people, there are white people continuing to manage our country. So there are many countries which don't achieve their independence. The case of Senegal, Mali, Cote d'Ivoire, and all of these countries. France was giving them something looking like independence, but it's not independent. They retire from our countries, they put black men, but they continue to govern to manage our country in the background. So things that Macky Sall is doing also, they say, okay, Senegal is having a train now, is the first country in West Africa which has a train. This train is a big uh, mistake for our country, because the company which built this train is Alstom. It's called Alstom. It is a French company. That company was how can I say it? Um, broke. I don't know if the word is correct. This company was broke. So Macky Sall uh, give them the opportunity to gain million and million of dollars because thanks to this project. So he don't think at this project to help our people sincerely. He's thinking at this project to help this company to be unfit. So this is the things that many African people don't know. So many of these contract also, it is Macron who call. We have our companies needing marché. I don't know how do you call marché, opportunities. So we have our companies needing opportunities. So can you give this project to our countries? So it will be something that you can expose to your people as something new you did for your country. So things happen in this way. So there are many companies in Senegal which are never uh, taken, who never achieved this contract. Every contract that is been signed is for French companies to come and bring their knowledge. And as my brother says, we have engineers in Senegal. Here in the diaspora, we have many people who can do the same thing that French companies are doing, but never they will call these guys. They will call French people to pay them our money and to make rich their companies because they have to seek for opportunities in Africa. So many another way to know that these people are working for colonial system. uh, we have something that is maintaining us into poverty in Africa, which is franc CFA. So in our countries, West Africa, we have a money that is created by France, that is controlled by France, and that is yeah, the property, I don't know, la propriété, that belong to France. So when you will see a president defending this money, because we all know that this money is what is the responsible of our failure in Africa. So Macky Sall, for example, Alassane Ouattara are the big defender of this money, France CFA. When you see them also defending French military bases, you need to know that these guys are Western guys. When you see them also giving uh, opportunities to Western companies, despite of giving it to local companies, you can know that these guys are working for Western system. When you see them also uh, continue to feed their people by taking the food from outside, despite of rather than feeding their people with what we are locally producing. So this is some of ideas you can observe. This is some actions you can observe to know which is what is the mentality of these guys. So you see them also killing their people, and being protected by ONU, UN, Nations Unies, protected by all of these big organizations. Because Macky Sall, in March 2021, he killed 15 Senegalese young people. You will never see UN talking about that. You will never see CEDEAO or all of these organizations, Union European Union, talking about that. So they are supporting him. Right? Even if he kill his people, he's a good president. Everywhere you will see meeting happening, they will invite Macky Sall, like he never killed somebody, like he's a perfect president in Africa. He's an example of a good president in Africa. But we Senegalese people know that his hands are taché de sang. He has blood of our people in his two hands. So I can give this some examples to complete what my brother said. I'm having some problem to express myself in English because I am French speaker. So I think that I hope that you understood what I was trying to make you know. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Case Park, my brother. You have expressed yourself very well. We heard you loud and clear.
Thank
I
you.
mean, you've got your message across very well. So,
Thank you.
well done. Thank you. So we see the similarities, how these things are similar everywhere, whether it's in East, in West, but they operate. I mean, they again and again, they speak the same language. Why we fail to understand? That's a question that needs to be answered.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I come to my brother Kwame Gonza, who is a Pan-Africanist. I'm sorry if I didn't do the proper introduction. I mean, you all have been here, and maybe I just see you as a familiar, and my brother's here. So I'm really sorry. Yeah, Kwame Gonza, he has also his own YouTube called Africa Reimagine. And if you really want to know what's happening in the continent in deep, in a research-based way, you have to really go and check out his YouTube. We have to bring also, I think, my brother Lambert to YouTube because he has, and every time I bring him on a certain issue, he just, I mean, there's nothing that drops. I am wowed. I love you, my brother, really. All of you. I'm so happy to have you and to call you brother. So Kwame, the same question to you. What are the signs and symptoms we should pay attention for these neo-colonial agents in our continent?
Thank you, Malet. I just want to thank my colleague.
Your sound, Kwame, it's low.
Can you hear me?
Yes, very good.
Perfect, perfect, perfect. Thank you, Malet. I want to thank my colleagues, my brother Lambert, and my brother Lansana. I'm trying to fix my sound. I don't know whether you can hear me now, Lambert. Lambert,
Very
can you
well.
hear me now? Okay, okay. All right. So I want also to add on what they have said. They have really elaborated on the situation very well. But nevertheless, I'll also go ahead to expand on it to give justice to the topic of today, what the characteristics of neo-colonial agents on the continent. So when we're talking about the neo-colonial agents on the continent, we are not only actually talking about the presidents in particular, but even it can be even business people. It can be even normal citizens themselves. When you look at people like Lambert spoke about the media, people in the media, you can see how they express themselves, whether they are representing, you can, when you look at them, you can differentiate whether they are representing Africa or they are representing the neo-colonial interests, or rather the West. Now, the term neo-colonialism, I first encountered it from the writings of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, especially when you're talking about the book Neo-colonialism, The Last Stage of Imperialism, that book which he published in 1965. And immediately the Americans protested against the book when he published it, because they thought that he's putting them out there in the light for people to know what these guys are about. So they protested against him. And even that time, Ghana was supposed to receive around $20 million from the United States as loan. So they seized the money and they said they will not give it to Ghana. Nkrumah has to remove the book out of of print. So I would encourage people really to read that book, because even when you read it today, it has that information which is very solid, that shows you the workings, and he has even a chapter in there which is called the mechanism of neo-colonialism, how it works. So when you read this book, you will be able to analyze and look at things, look at systems, look at people and how they are behaving, and be able to understand yourself that this person is representing neo-colonialism, or this leader, this president, the way he's acting is a neo-colonialist. He's helping the neo-colonialists to dominate us. So Nkrumah defines neo-colonialism as a continuation of colonialism. So neo-colonialism itself means new colonialism. So it is colonial, it's the same colonialism, but it's just that he gave it a term, neo, to make it look like it is new colonialism. But he said that neo-colonialism is subtle colonialism, so is hidden colonialism. And so they achieve the same objectives which they achieved under colonialism in a different guise. He called it a different guise. Now, what do they do in this system? He said that the country which is in the grip of neo-colonialism, it has all the outward trappings of a free state, of an independent state, an independent country. For example, flags, it has national flag, it has national anthem, it has seats at the United Nations, but in actual, in reality, that country is not free. Its politics is controlled from the metropolis in France, in Brussels, London, Paris, Washington. So that is how he described neo-colonialism, that it governs the country and continues to exploit it, but in a manner which is hidden from the people. People, they may think that they have leaders, but when in actual sense that those leaders are controlled from outside. The economic policies of the countries are controlled from outside, and the political direction of the nations, of the countries, also is controlled from outside the country, and majorly from the United States, in Washington, London, in the UK, Paris, and Brussels, in Belgium. Now, who are these people? When we are talking about the characteristics of neo-colonialists, or people who are serving neo-colonialism, neo-colonialism, as we said, is a form of imperialism. These type of people, they normally use terms which are transient. When I'm talking about transient terms, these are ambiguous. Let me say ambiguous terms. Things which are not scientific, okay? They are not practical, like words which are not practical, that they don't mean much, okay? You can look at words, for example, like sustainability, okay? People normally talk about sustainability, sustainable development goals, okay? Sustainable development goals, SDGs. People who are neo-colonialists and represent neo-colonialism, they use such terms, Millennium Development Goals, SDGs. When you examine their speeches, especially presidents, you will see that they have these words in their speeches, rule of law, constitution, even though their countries may not have these things which they are talking about. Sustainable development goals, they will talk about private sector, for example, okay? Private sector, they will be championing the private sector as the only means of salvation, even though we know that countries like Singapore, South Korea, Japan itself, China majorly, all these countries have developed not on privatization and the private sector, but rather their development to be rapid have been driven by the public sector. But these leaders who represent neo-colonialism, you will see that they will be mentioning words like the private sector, privatization, okay, rule of law, freedom, sustainable development goals, Okay, when you examine their speeches, Millennium Development Goals, these words they don't miss in their speeches. Also, on one side, these people, they associate themselves with the West very much. Okay, they don't pay attention to the African culture. Even when they pay attention to it, they pay lip service to the African culture. Okay, you may find that someone puts on a shirt once in a while, which is African in nature. They don't put on, African attire, for example. They don't like associating themselves with Africa. They like more to associate themselves with the West and the Western standards. They like to measure everything by the Western standards, like what I mentioned when you are talking about democracy. They will always compare to the West. They will not compare themselves, to African. Like, we want to set a new standard for Africa. Okay, they will always compare themselves to Obama. Or, they will say Bill Clinton. They will say Obama has said this. George Bush has said this. Okay, they will say Macron has said this. So they always want to, to look at the West as the standard of everything. Whether you are talking about news, they watch BBC, CNN, Fox News. These are the types of things, these type of people, if you want to identify them, that you should look at it. Now, they are also champions. These people who represent neo-colonialism, one of their characteristics is that they represent, European solutions. When you come to the African context, they like to champion the Western solutions for Africa. So when you are talking about Africa, that you are bringing African solutions, immediately they will dismiss it. They will dismiss any African solution, whether you're talking about politics or economic, and you are talking about we should bring our own political system, which favors us as Africans. This thing of electing and regretting, within a short period of 1 year or 2 years, we have just elected a leader, and then now in a few years, like 2 years, after 2 years of elections, we are regretting. And you say that we should, I think, change this type of electing leaders or getting leaders. These people, they will dismiss any African solutions, okay, whether they are political or economic. They will say that Africans, the African things, they don't work, they are outdated. Okay, they will look at the white man's things as the ultimate solutions to the African problems, even though we have seen that for the last 600 years, ever since the white man came here, those solutions which they have been giving us, they have not worked for us. Even after independence, when we got independence, 60 years, into independence now, we have not, gotten a breakthrough. And when you look at countries like China, which adopted their own solutions, traditional solutions from their country, they have been able to develop in a period of 30 years, in a very, very short period of 30 years. So these people, they do not like Pan-Africanism. So when you talk about Pan-Africanism, they look at Pan-Africanism as some outdated ideology, okay, some outdated idea. You see, not knowing that Pan-Africanism as an ideology is what brought us independence, is what brought us, freedom from slavery. When you are talking about slavery, it was Pan-Africanism which brought us all these goods, the freedom which we are enjoying today, the relative freedom, political freedom which we are enjoying today, was brought by Pan-Africanism, because our leaders worked together. People like Nkrumah was working with liberation movements in Guinea. When you are talking about Guinea, Conakry, Guinea-Bissau, was working with people in Zimbabwe, was working with people in South Africa, Uganda, all over the continent. Nkrumah was. So that was the Pan-African spirit that time, which brought us independence. But when you talk about Pan-Africanism today, these people who represent neo-colonialism, they will dismiss Pan-Africanism and say it is not anything. Pan-Africanism is an outdated idea. So they will try to dismiss any African solution. So these people, they try to hurry to side with the West. Some of them, when you monitor their children, when you look at their children, they study from the West. They don't regard the African system of education and health. They get their treatments. Okay, when you are talking about when they become sick, they go to the West for treatment. When they want their children, their wives, or to give birth, they will send their children to the West. That is, I'm talking about the leaders. Okay, you know, they have houses. Okay, you will find that they have houses in Britain. They have houses in Paris. You find that they have houses in Washington. So these are the signs which you can look out for you to identify these people who are representing neo-colonialism on the African continent. And on the other side, they are very, you know, quick to welcome the West, and especially military bases. We have seen this instance, you know, many times. We have seen this situation many times. For example, recently in Zambia, okay, we have seen this in Somalia recently. We heard that they have just elected a new president in Somalia, and immediately they have elected a new president, and in a very short time, even less than a week, they have decided to bring back the American troops on Somalian soil. So you can know that, you can rest, you know, you can be rest assured that the president there who was elected in Somalia recently is just a neo-colonial, you know, puppet. Because you look at the steps he has taken, even the oil contracts which were cancelled in February, you will see that he will reinstate them. So these type of leaders, they are very quick to welcome military bases on the African soil, in the regions where they belong, and they are very quick to give out African resources. Okay, even though Africa is not benefiting, you know, the African people are not benefiting, they will quickly give out the African resources. The other thing which I noticed about these type of people is that they are cowards in very many cases, because neo-colonialism operates in different methods. It has methods in which it operates. For example, they will intimidate certain leaders if they refuse to act in a certain way. Others, they will bribe them. Okay, but the courageous leaders, they will stand their ground and say, I represent my people, they elected me. But the neo-colonial agents, they will not stand for that. If it is bribing them, like I said, and they'll give them a house in Paris, or they will send their children to Paris, or they will send their children to Washington, or to London, or to Brussels to study, they will sell out to the whole country and give out the resources of the country. And the public pass will take, like, for example, 2%, 5%, 10%, and these multinational companies will take like 80%. Like my brother Lansana, what he said, what is happening in Senegal with the oil and gas in Senegal, that Senegal was able to, you know, the president was able to give out the oil in Senegal. With the 10%, Senegal will retain only 10%, and France will take 80%. With their cooperation. So this is these are the characteristics that these people are cowards, that they don't want to stand for their people. They don't want to stand like how you see President Kwame Nkrumah, how he stood with courage, and they tried to bribe him, they tried to intimidate him, but he refused and said, I want to represent my people. I want to unify Africa. I want Africa to work for the Africans. People like President Magufuli of Tanzania, who died in very dubious circumstances, which we believe that he was killed by these neo-colonialists. So President Magufuli stood strong and said, I want to represent my people. And so these multinational companies who have been robbing us, who have been stealing the gold from Tanzania, they have to pay. So they decided to kill him. So however much these type of leaders who are good will be intimidated, they will stand and be courageous. But the neo-colonial agents, they will not, you know, be able to stand and be courageous. They will not exercise any form of courage to be able to represent their people. Oh, so that is one of the characteristics. The other characteristics which I see is that these type of people, they don't care about transforming the structural basis of society, transforming the structures of society, whether you're talking about the political structures or the economic structures. Because if you are talking about transforming a nation, then you have to transform the structure of it, the structure of the nation. You have to shape the structure, like what you see President Magufuli did when he came to power in Tanzania, that he shook the whole structure of the economy of Tanzania, that you saw that there is rapid transformation that is, happening in the country. But when you look at the neo-colonial agents, they don't care about transforming the structure of the nations where they, where they govern, or the nations where they are, even if they are just mere business people or people who are leading state corporations. They don't care about transforming the structural basis of the economy. They care about things like reform. So you will hear them using terms like reform. We are reforming the economy. The country needs reform. So those kind of words, they don't want to talk about transformation of society, but rather they are constantly talking about reform this, reform that. So they don't care about transforming the structural basis of their societies. Now, on the other thing which I looked at is that these people, they lack originality. These neo-colonial agents, they lack originality, that they don't have original ideas. Okay, even though we have many ideas which have been put up by Pan-Africanists. You can talk of people like Kwame Nkrumah. You can talk of people like Marcus Garvey. You can talk of people like Walter Rodney. So these people, they will not go out to seek some of these original ideas to be able to come and be able to transform, the economies. They will not. So they will instead run to the World Bank to seek for economic policies that they will be able to implement in their countries. They will go and ask for everything that they, even the solutions which are in the country. They will not ask our professors in universities, the many universities which we have in the countries. They will not come out to ask civil society how they want the country to run. No, they will not do that. They will go out there to the World Bank, to the Europeans, and whenever Europeans, summon them to summits, they will run, they will identify with those people. So they don't have original ideas on how to transform the African continent itself when you look at it in its entirety. So when I looked around, these are the characteristics which I would come up with. Thank you very much, Malet.
Thank you very much indeed, Gonza. Really, that was Kwame Nkrumah's 101 brought to us. Now, really, thank you. So, yeah, just to reflect on, everything really, what you said exists in this time as well. But a couple of examples, these people, how they quickly welcome the Western solution, even to the extent of, putting under threat their peaceful relation with the neighboring countries. Now, look at Zambia, when they allow AFRICOM, that is really not good for Zimbabwe or any other country surrounding, especially Zimbabwe, given its fragile relation with the Western world. Look at now Ethiopia, when Somalia, again, everyone around us except Eritrea, I think, have AFRICOM or the US military base in their country. Now Somalia is added. We know that what type of relation we had during Formaggio time, and what Prime Minister Abiy was trying to bring those, Horn of Africa alliance between Ethiopia, Eritrea, and Somalia, and then to the greater Horn region. But now that just thrown out of the window. They don't care. It's just about them. They don't care also the peaceful relation between people and the two peoples.
Malet. So what I see is that actually there's some types of leaders which we have, and you can put them on this continent in certain categories. There is a category of leaders that pretend to work like, to speak that like they are Pan-Africanists, okay? But when in actuality, they are working for the neo-colonialists, okay? They speak like Pan-Africans. I will give you an example. It's not good to be mentioning names, but I would suggest to say that the leader, the president in the country of Ghana, falls in that category. Okay, that is the category he falls in, because he has been even very much trying to dismantle the legacy of Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, which he built. We all know what Nkrumah achieved all over the world. Nkrumah is a prominent name all over the world. He achieved a lot for the African, continent, to the extent that Nkrumah reached even a certain time, and he said that when he went to Guinea, he was removed from power and he went to stay in Guinea. Nkrumah said that I have built up the country for them. I gave them independence and I've built up the country for them. And he said that it is up to them if they destroy it. Okay. The only reason I want to go back to Ghana is because of African unity. That's the only reason. But he did not want to come back to Ghana to build the Ghana. He wanted to come back to fight for African unity. So that is a category of leaders that they give lip service, to the tenets of Pan-Africanism, but in actual sense, they are dismantling the gains of Pan-Africanism, like what you see is happening with President Akufo-Addo. Now, on the other side, you have people, a category of people who blatantly, they are not ashamed, like outward, not ashamed. There's no shame that they just go out and sell the continent. They will sell the interests of their people. Like you see what is happening in Zambia. There's no shame. He will just sell whatever belongs to the African people. He doesn't care. So you saw that the president in Zambia, President Hichilema, he was able to go and pull out the citizens from Ethiopia, claiming that Ethiopia is unstable, is an unstable state, even though all the other African countries had not done anything like that. Okay, so for him, he has no pretense. He just shows you that I'm a puppet. I'm out, all out puppet. So if you want to do whatever you can, I'm a puppet. So he doesn't consult other neighboring countries. He doesn't consult the African Union. Okay, he just acts, out of his own interests. He doesn't care. Okay, what he's getting from it is what he follows. So he brings the military in Zambia. I don't know whether he asked Zimbabwe what they think about this, because he's neighbor to Zimbabwe. I don't know whether he asked SADC to consult with SADC when he's allowing AFRICOM to come to Zambia. I don't know whether he asked the African Union. So these type of people, they are outright sellouts. They do not visit the other African countries. Okay, so you will see those characteristics in those types of leaders, that category. They don't visit other African countries, but they are very quick to visit London. They are very quick to visit Paris. So I don't know whether that man, I've never heard him that he has visited West Africa, that President Hichilema of Zambia. He has never visited West Africa to come and see what is happening on the other part of Africa. So they are not concerned about what happens in the other parts of Africa. They will just lock themselves in those small, gates, those small countries, and they will be there. So now there's another category, which I think that it serves neo-colonialism unconsciously, because there is those who serve consciously and those who serve unconsciously. And those who serve unconsciously, claiming also that they are serving African interests. I think in that category, you can put people like Museveni of Uganda, who says that by sending his army to Somalia, that he's serving African interests, even though that army, which they say that he went under the African Union, is being paid by the European Union. Okay, that army was being paid. The army which is in Somalia, the African Union army, which is in Somalia, it has countries from soldiers from troops from Burundi, from Uganda, from Kenya, from Rwanda. Okay, so but all these troops, this contingent is being paid by the European Union and the Americans. So you can see that someone is serving the Western interests, while at the same time claiming, when you look at the interviews which Museveni has been doing, he says that he's serving the African people by removing Al-Shabaab. But let us look back at how Al-Shabaab came about. Okay, Al-Shabaab came about by America going to Somalia to
Kwame,
destroy the
quickly
country.
that one, okay? This is,
Yeah, I
yeah.
beg your pardon?
Now I said this one. Tell us quickly about it, the Al Shabaab,
Okay.
and I want to move
Yes.
to Lambert.
Yes. So, so you can see that Al-Shabaab came about because of the destruction of Somalia by the United States, wants to overthrow the country. So the United States, when it could not fight the Somalian people who had come up against it, then it sent in the Africans to use them. So they are using, neo-colonialism is using people like Museveni and others in the region to claim that they are fighting under the African Union to stabilize Somalia. So the other thing which you can look at is that you see that people like Museveni, they claim that they are working for Africans, for Pan-Africanism. And one of the things he normally mentions in his 3 points, Pan-Africanism is one of them. So he says that he believes the integration of the continent, but at the same time, he's implementing an all-out, uncontrolled policies, okay, which are neo-colonial in nature. Like when you look at the financial sector in the country, in Uganda, the financial sector, all of it is controlled by Western banks, okay, in the country. The construction sector, all of it is controlled by Western banks. I mean, Western corporations in the country. Now, the oil and the energy sector, all of it is controlled by Western, France and Total. These are the ones which are controlling the energy sector in the country. So Switzerland and Britain and all those ones, they are controlling the energy sector. They are controlling the construction sector. The Indians are controlling the steel and the provisions and the manufacturing in the country. But he's claiming that he's working for Pan-Africanism. So some of these people, I think that they fall in that category of unconsciously working for neo-colonialism. We have that group, and then we have a group which is consciously working for colonialism, like Ichilema, when you go to Zambia. And then we have people who are camouflaging for selfish interests, like Akufo-Addo. When you go and look at people like Akufo-Addo, when you go to South Africa and you look at people like that president of South Africa, what is his name? Ramaphosa, Cyril Ramaphosa of South Africa. So that group, that kind of group. But how should we work with these type of people as Pan-Africanists? I think that is what I will come back to elaborate on, how we should approach this situation, which is very delicate for us. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Kwame. Indeed, really. I just want to, with what you mentioned, those categories of neo. Did we lose Lambert? Because my question was to Lambert. Okay, then maybe we go with Lansana. So you were describing for us, you were bringing the case of Senegal for us. Okay, is Lambert trying? Just a second. I know by Lambert it's late and sometimes the connection is not reliable. So I really want him to. Oh, he's coming there. Okay. Yeah. Lambert, you're there. Do you hear us? Can you hear us?
Hello, Lambert, can you hear me? Can you hear us, Lambert?
Lambert. Okay. Yeah. Is he talking?
You unmute yourself. Lambert, you have to unmute yourself.
I'm unmuted. Can you people hear me?
Yeah, you are breaking. Come again.
I didn't hear your question. I was out for just about maybe a minute or so.
Yeah, just a bit louder. But yeah, I was bringing that last point of Kwame. If you agree, the place where you are right now is the leader doing it unconsciously, or which I doubt. And then also together with that, if you can tell us, how do we approach this situation? Of course, one of the reason to organize this discussion today is to create awareness, but there are people who really knows very well these are the characteristics of neo-colonial agents, and they know exactly. But how do we counter it? What should we do? Okay, we are informed, but then when we come to implementation, what are the little things as an ordinary citizen or people in the media in various ways, how can we encounter it beyond informing ourselves?
Thank you, Colette. I'll take over from what from my brother say regarding
We cannot hear you.
Let him put off the video. I think it is okay if he uses audio.
Okay, you can try them.
can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, very good. Now go on.
My, so you can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, so thank you. Let me just take over from there. Except my battery is bad. I left the house where there was power. So taking over from what Brother Gonza said regarding those who do it unconsciously, and he named my museum with the heart in Uganda. Okay, Gonza basically has a point, but also you have to ask: is he really, does he do it unconsciously, or is he leveraging that to meet his own personal interests? Because for example, the example of going to Somalia and taking Solias, one of the things I've always stood up against and which I continue to oppose is the question of deploying it called African Union Force, in parts of Africa, apparently to keep peace. First of all, I disagree with the concept of keeping peace. Which peace are you going to keep? So but then what we fail to notice with this kind of projects is that uh, the forces that we send to keep this, as example by Goda, but we saw send them
Okay,
to
maybe go on. You are saying very important point, and I don't want to miss it. So you are breaking. It's something really I don't want to miss about this peacekeeping
uh,
mission.
Can you have him put on only audio? Let him put off the video.
Okay, you can try that.
okay, my can you now hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
So I was saying that the question of the African Union forces, being whether it's in Somalia, whether it's in Ethiopia. One thing I've understood with this kind of forces is that number one, Uganda's been leading, by the way, in many aspects of sending our military to countries outside. And Kwame said we normally pride ourselves and say we are getting involved in African issues, and we try to project it as a Pan-African Pan-African action. My president says this is our Pan-Africanism being demonstrated. But I think that either well, Gonza thinks he does it unconsciously. I personally don't think he does it unconsciously. I think he does it consciously. He knows because the politics around it is quite complex. You will appreciate that and Gonza indicated uh, the AU is basically an imperial force that is being used to enforce foreign interests. I don't believe the AU, defends foreign interests. It's just that we can't have the US soldiers come because it has so many connotations. So you have to pick one from within Africa. In Uganda, I can assure you, one of the best, one of the things our soldiers look forward to so well and which they want to do is to actually go for EU missions. They struggle. I'm told within the military, sometimes you have to bribe in order for you to be enlisted as one of those who are going for an EU mission. The reason is that it is very highly paid, about 3-4 times more than the amount of pay you will get as a regular soldier here in Uganda. So Somalia, soldiers look forward to going to Somalia. And the reason is that money is not being paid by the AU, obviously, as my colleague Kwame indicated. It is being paid by the Europeans. That tells you they are willing to pay so much, so much money for these people to go out. It means they're obviously serving their interests. That is without us going back to discuss the issue of the AU budget being fully funded by, I mean, about 80% of it being funded by by the European Union and foreigners. So it still takes us back to what Kwame said, except I wouldn't argue that it's unconscious. I think it is conscious, but we have people and leaders now who are looking at how do you exploit these situations while claiming to be to be a Pan-African. So to answer the second question, what then do we do? Mallet, the first thing to solving any problem is to be able to recognize it, know that this is a problem. And I think this is where we need to start from. We need to begin to point out this kind of individuals. We need to begin to 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 bring them into a spotlight. We've got to begin to diagnose and look at their actions, the policies, their relationship. For example, if I was in Zambia, I would have been very worried immediately to see that the first act of my president is to visit the US rather than an African country. That one for me is already a flag that should already point me out to seeing that this one is already, not serving purely our interests. I would be bothered if I was in Zambia that my president is bringing in AFRICOM when there is no known rebel or terrorist force operating within Zambia. Because Zambia should ask themselves, what does AFRICOM come to do in Zambia? That, I mean, what is the justification? It is not there. If anything, they're claiming they're going to solve problems outside Zambia. Now, if they're solving problems outside Zambia, have the countries or leaders of those places where the AFRICOM has been brought to solve their problems arrived at an MOU with Zambia to justify putting AFRICOM in Zambia? Now it is Somalia. Again, we are saying somebody has been elected, and one day after being elected, the US is sending soldiers to his country and is welcoming them. If I'm in Somalia, I'm going to ask
A
and
big
say,
red flag.
what is that?
It's a big red flag. Just a big red flag.
Yes, it's a very big one, because it is one day you have been elected and the following day you're welcoming a foreign force to your country. That's a flag. So now the people of Somalia to say, well, because that is so blatant, that is so clear. You haven't had a military force, a foreign military force in your country for the last so many years, and somebody is elected in one day, and the following day they're bringing in soldiers to your country. That's a flag. That is what the people should know, that, well, this one is obviously not serving our interests. It's serving neo-colonial interests. Now, once you're able to see that that's a flag, the question now becomes, what are you going to do? Of course, I'm imagining we haven't yet entered an election, and already somebody has come in. But acknowledging and knowing that this one is no longer serving your interests is very important. And that's why we now go ahead and say, how do we resist? How do we begin to keep him in check? The first thing is to rise up. The other day I tweeted on my feed that the people of Somalia specifically need to rise up against the re-occupation. I call it an occupation. I mean, they are militarizing Somalia. They are militarizing Djibouti. And until the people of those countries
Lambert, are you there? Okay, it says device not connected. One of the things that I tell my people when, webinar is organized or something, there's a lot of connection problems when, especially when we do it from Africa. Certain countries have a good connections, but sometimes it's, big cities have, but it comes, it comes with it, and we should be patient and, not try to be distracted by it. So, yeah. Okay, so maybe Lansana, you would like to come in on this. How do we approach this? If there is anything, okay, an example in your country that maybe it's the academicians or civil society organizations that they have encountered. What is your thought on this in going forward once we are empowered with information? I mean, we may not expect things from the government, but as people, what should we do? And also another things, maybe you need or not to reflect necessarily on this one, but we have been talking about this neo-colonialism, the leaders or imposing it on their own nation, but also consciously or unconsciously, what they do is they are trying to impose that neo-colonialism, from their own territory to a neighboring country. For example, look at, now by Ethiopia being surrounded by all those countries who have African bases, and with all our fragile relation with the West, with all the pressures that we have from the Western world, we are full of insecurities. So there is also that thing, being a neo-colonial agent, to impose that neo-colonialism to a next country, given that, for example, that country resisted. Like, I mean, the case of Ethiopia is, I think, perfect.
Yeah. So
yeah, please go.
yeah. So I think that it's not easy. Some of these guys afraid to be killed by Western system. Kwame Nkrumah, Thomas Sankara, Patrice Lumumba, Umnyobe, Modibo Keita. All of these guys has been killed by Western system. So some president afraid to have the same end, like all of these great president we lost. So it's not simple. We have to work as our great president did in the past, work all together. But there is a barrier of the language. We have to let aside socialism, liberalism, and all of these systems that Western are create to continue to exploit African countries or other countries. We have to create our own system, and we had it already, which is Pan-Africanism. So we have to change our educational system that is created by white men at the time of colonialism, at the time of slavery. So we have to build our own educational system, that teach us our value, that teach us our culture, that teach us our realities. This is something very important, and I think African countries need to think about it. We have also to promote our language, work in our language. We are having how can I say, retard, late, because we are trying to understand how to speak English. We are trying to understand how to speak French. In our family, we already know how to understand some of these things they try to explain us at school, and we cannot understand. But if it was in our own language, it will be easier for us to to have a better understanding of all of these topics. So we have to promote our language, our local languages, and also we have to elect president that people that are not supported by uh, Western guys. We did sometimes mistakes because they come with a lot of money and they pay everybody money, and we go to the election room and we vote for them because they pay us money to vote for them. So we have to know that we are voting for ourselves. We are voting for generation that will come after us, and we have to be conscious about responsibility we are taking at the time we are voting. So it is also something important for me. And as my brother says here, so all of these guys, they don't go uh, to hospitals or African hospitals. They go abroad, they bring their family abroad, and it is a government paying for their family to be, yes, for when they are ill. So people need to know that if we don't have leaders that are being treated in our country, so they will never mind our troubles. They will never mind situation of our people. So we have to look about all of these problems we're facing every day to know that these guys are not concerned about what is important for us. So their children are not in the same school that um, uh, poor people, that like poor people. So they are not in the same world. They are not thinking at the same things. Also, we need to support people not because he's he's well known as political leader, but there are many people in Africa that you can see with a very nice idea, loving their countries, doing many sacrifices for their countries, but they don't have money, they don't have medias supporting them, so people don't vote to them. People are not concerned about, people don't are not aware about all of their speaks. So we support only guys that media are putting in front of our screens. So these
And
medias,
case,
lot, yeah,
uh, yes, just maybe I could rejoin on that, on then
yeah,
maybe you can take over.
yeah,
Because
go,
you
go.
you mentioned something, and I don't want to forget it later on.
Yeah, yeah,
Speaking
go, go, go.
of elections, yeah, elections have consequences, and one of the things that I could call it a trick or a strategy that the neo-colonialists are applying in Africa is they have imported to us a new basis upon which to elect leaders. And you must notice that we are beginning to elect celebrities. They've imported to Africa celebrity politics. You know, now we have musicians, we have footballers, and they are convincing the African to vote on the basis of celebrity. And yet, if we're looking at leaders who are for Africa, if we're going to look at leaders who actually serve our interests, we must begin to look at what are the plans. Because if somebody does not talk about Pan-Africanism, even when he's campaigning, because we can only judge the level of Pan-Africanism, we can judge that somebody is a Pan-Africanist, number one, from his policies. What does he say he will do? Because that's why we judge them. But what is now being sold in Africa is that the West, the neo-colonialists are propping up musicians, they're propping up footballers, they're propping up comedians, and these people are winning elections because by the time they become candidates, they've already been celebrated, they've been known, and they've looked at one thing in Africa. These people have understood that we have a generation that is less ideologically grounded. Our generation of young people, it is the old, the Kwame Nkrumahs, it is the Musevenis, of the past. Somehow they had this grounding. When you look at our colleague, the Pan-African from Kenya, Lumumba professor, he worked alongside Nyerere. I mean, this a generation that understood what Africa needed. A generation that was grounded on Pan-Africanism. But our own, I can assure you, we are less grounded. We have entered, and we are trying to absorb the Western way of life, the Western morals. We look at life from a Western generation in which we have grown up. So somehow our understanding of Pan-Africanism, our understanding of what is, is purely African is very weak. And now to exploit that generation, to exploit our young people, who, by the way, are the majority right now in Africa. Because whether you go to Senegal, I want to believe that the bulk of your population is mostly young people. In Uganda, I think it's about 80%. It's mostly young people around the age of 30. Now, that's a generation that has grown up seeing musicians, that has grown up watching the English Premier League, not their own league in their countries. And then they give you a footballer as a candidate, and you find so many of them running and voting that one into power, and not knowing they are getting into power a neo-colonial agent. So just I was trying to come in and make sure, because for me this is really significant, that we need to go back to politics and to elective politics, where we look at the ideas of somebody, we look at somebody's training, and again, one more thing, look at the political parties within our countries. In the past, we had, for example, we had exchanges. You had, for example, in East Africa, you had the Kenya African National Union, you had the Uganda Cross Congress in Uganda, you had the one in Tanzania, and there was a level of exchange between these parties. You could have a party in Uganda sending it is cadres, it is young people to network with the young people of KANU in Kenya. And in so doing this, we were able to build networks. We were able to deepen and strengthen the ties that hold our countries together. Today, we actually don't have parties. We now have small organizations which are loosely put together by the West. They only have one person at the top. In Uganda, for example, well, I wouldn't want to mention names, but we have a new political group which was formed in less than a year by a musician who cannot even define for you what physical policy is. I can assure you, you may have noticed that. I won't mention names, but that is the person who almost became president, by the way, voted by over 3 million people. And it wasn't a lie. Those people voted him. And of course, while there are frustrations within Uganda, which justify voting that, it doesn't excuse the fact that you must look at the quality of the person, that you're voting. And then the other thing is, Africans must stop to vote against. There is what they call a protest vote. In Uganda, I actually think of the same. You vote a candidate simply because you hate the other one. And then because once you have that kind of mindset, you forget, you stop to look at the credentials of the person you're voting. Instead, you look at it in terms of the person you don't want. Now, that is chasing for change without knowing which change you want. And I think that's what happens in Africa. People just want to get rid of the bad leader and don't look at who is coming in. And the neo-colonialists are exploiting that. In Uganda, they will say, President Museveni is now unpopular. Perhaps he's no longer serving our interests. So they bring us anybody, one who perhaps even who is much more dumber than the one who is president. But of course, perhaps they know they're going to exploit and use him to serve their interests. So Africans need to become more careful. We need to avoid what they call celebrity politics. It doesn't mean a musician, a footballer, a comedian cannot make a good president. But we must not base on the fact that he's a comedian, he's a musician, is a footballer to elect him. We must base on his ideas. We must base on what he has brought forward to offer. We must base on his history. It's very important. You can't bring somebody from the streets to be your president. Somebody who has never given a public speech before he became, he contested. You can't get somebody from the streets to become your president because he has been playing football. Somebody who has never attended an ideological class. In the past, what I like about the old parties, the traditional parties, of Africa, the ones in Ghana, it was Kwame. What was the Kwame Nkrumah's party? I can't hear you, Kwame. I think you are muted. What was that party? Still you're muted.
It was CPP. It was CPP. It was called Conservative People's Party.
Now, I am so sure that when I compare it with the other political parties, they always had a system of growth, of graduation of leaders. from the lower levels until by them somebody becomes a candidate for president. He understands things. It is no longer the case. And that's why we had, in the past, we had leaders. You wonder, why did we have Nyerere in the past? Why did we have did we have Obote in Uganda? You can of course have all his weaknesses, but he had a sense of Pan-Africanism. Why did you have Kwame Nkrumah? And even the presidents who replaced them a bit, actually, the presidents who immediately came after them were actually colonial agents. They had been used to put them off. But after them, a new breed that was fairly grounded on African ideologies, on Pan-Africanism, came up to do away with these puppets. But that's because they had a system through which they came. Today, we don't do that. Somebody speaks from a pitch, somebody speaks from a comedy room, somebody speaks from a theater of music, and is brought to contest, and people are running after that one without asking where he has come from. And that's where all the things which affect us come from. That's why you have the idea of morals which don't meet with us. You have LGBT. I mean, it's a mix-up that is going to destroy our society and get us back into being enslaved within our continent. So I wanted just to bring that to our attention, Case. You can carry on from that.
Thank you, Lambert, for that really, but very important celebrity politics. We have them all: the footballers, the comedians. We have them all as we speak in power. But I think if Sadio Mane runs for president, maybe the Senegalese we will vote for him, given his work. No. Please go on, my brother Lansana.
So
you see, it's very wants us to vote for.
No, thank you, brother, because you complete my thinking, and it's very, very nice. I appreciate. Thank you very much. So, all of these guys you're talking about, all of this celebrity you're talking about, I think they all belong to a very big organization that is this new world order. They are putting their puppet everywhere. There are some musicians, there are some comedians, there are some of these guys. So they're controlling all of these guys. When they know that you are getting influence from your younger people, they pick up you. I don't know if the word is correct. So they catch you and they put you on their side. So you become a traitor for your nation, for your people, for the population of your country. I think this is these guys who are leading the world now. So media also are having a very big role, very big responsibility on that, because they push up people they want you to see as celebrities sometimes also. So this is the same persons controlling this media. Rich people, who are them? They all belong in the same family. They all are together. They are a friend of the president, or he knows somebody who knows the president. They're all belonging to the same corporation. So you know what we have to fight is for is to have measures, as our sister is doing. Is very important, is to change our education system, which is very important also, and to put people being proud of their culture. All the same you are explaining is true, because we are looking at movies that are showing us very nice life in USA, but we are seeing every time on our TV people starving in Africa, people seeking for water, people dying for war, in the war. So they put all of these images on our mind to bring us hating ourselves. Say psychologically, they are doing a work is to make African people hate themselves, because they're hating us and we also are hating ourselves. So if we hate ourselves, we never fight for ourselves. We never sacrifice ourselves for the better of our country, for the better of our people. So controlling measures, controlling educational system, controlling what else? Having people that are belonging to these corporations and helping Pan-African. People don't need to know that the rich people in Africa, we know them, but they never bring their hand to the change in Africa. They are they have billions of dollars. They are very rich people in Africa. But what they all interests them is to continue to have more valor, to continue to become rich and rich and rich. They never finance political leaders that are having these ideas to revolutionary ideas. So I'm sorry, I have many ideas that I cannot explain clearly because I speak French. But I think I hope that you can take all of these ideas and develop it better than I can do. Yeah.
Thank you very much. There is no need to apologize. We all speak this colonial
Yeah.
language. I mean, we are no better than you. Maybe we like commonly we speak English, but that doesn't make us better for
Yeah.
the situation. So I come back to you, Lambert, to finish. I mean, I'm excited. I like all the points raised, but also because of time. So I come back to Lambert now to finish his point. I can remind you if you want. You were saying, in terms of approach, the first step is to recognize and then, to agonize it. And you're bringing the example of Zambia and Somalia, what their people need to do. So if there is other points, so you may go on.
Well, I stated that usually the first thing, of course, like you just repeated, is to identify, I mean, to recognize the problem, to see the flags, and once you see the flag, then I mean it's a first step. You see the flags, and then you begin to see how then do you respond to that kind of of situation. I think that one of the things that's affecting African countries, and which the West still, the neo-colonialists are working so hard to make sure they stop us from developing, is what I'll refer to as the institutional capacities within Africa. You know, they have ensured that, because once you concentrate power on an individual in a country, then you can only manipulate that individual, and you're able to manipulate the whole country. Now, I think that going forward, what we need in Africa is to work on our institutions, the different institutions of government, to strengthen them so that we have checks on each other. Otherwise, a country like Uganda, you find you have the parliament, you have the judiciary, but at the end of the day, the country is being run by the executive branch. That's just the president. So in this case, if for example, like in Somalia, if you're able to see the flag and you have seen that the president is actually a neo-colonial agent, and maybe in this particular case, you just voted for him yesterday and he's already president, what are you going to do immediately? Now, that's where the strength of other institutions would come in to check this kind of president. But if it
But
finds
sorry,
in a country where
bro, sorry, I will just add something. In Senegal, we are French people working inside of our institutions. Do you know that?
no, I couldn't actually even know that.
Yeah, they are working inside of our institutions. They say they are helping our institutions to be strengthful. So this is
Yeah,
another
no,
matter.
it is, yes, that's actually true. So was it which president? Maybe Gonza can remind me. Which country was it? Rwanda employed Tony
Senegal.
Blair?
Yeah,
No,
go.
there's a country which employed Tony Blair to be the advisor or something like that. I think only recently. Was it within East
Yeah,
Africa? Now
yeah,
that is the problem.
it was when President Magufuli died and President Suhuru came to power that she decided to invite Tony Blair as an economic advisor. So I just wonder which kind of economic advisor Tony Blair
Now,
is when he's
exactly.
not even an economist.
How do you bring somebody an ocean away to advise you on the economics of your country? Now, this tells you the subversion that takes place within institutions. Now, one of the main weapons that neo-colonialists use is that they do not want us to develop the institutional strength and independence within Africa. That is why there is war. Let's assume there are rebels, there are terrorists in Somalia. What do you need AFRICOM for? Why don't we look at developing the Somali army to take care of its problems? But then what do? You want to bring AFRICOM to come and do the fighting for how long? Will you always fight for the people of Somalia? You are going to bring the soldiers from Uganda, and they have been and other countries within East Africa, and pay them to fight. I mean, to be in Somalia, and for 10 years, the people of Somalia will they be there forever? So what it means is that Somalia will not have a stronger army. They are going to remain dependent, and that is good for the neo-colonialists. So once we realize that a given president or a given leader, whether he's in power or outside of power, is a neo-colonial agent, the next step is we begin to see how do we limit his influence if he's already in a position of power, of course. Is president like in Somalia? We now look at the strength of the other institutions. If there's a parliament, how does parliament begin to make sure that it is part and parcel of the decisions? When the minister last time in Somalia signed an agreement with the U.S. corporation to loot, I will not call it looting because it should have been that the oil from Somalia and their gas, the president rightly cancelled that agreement. So if in this case the minister was actually a neo-colonial agent, in this case we had an authority which was able to intervene and do away with the agreement. That is what I'm talking about, the strength of institutions. That is, by the way, at a smaller level. But if we can have strong institutions which are able to check each other, then it means a puppet in one institution is checked by the Pan-Africans in other institutions. In the event that we don't have this neo-colonial agent in power, and perhaps is seeking to go into power, then of course we go back to what Case was speaking, that we have to acknowledge and ensure that in
We have lost him. Sorry. We have lost him. I think, Mallet, you have to go ahead. Can you unmute yourself?
Okay, so I see him still, but he's freezed. Anyway, yeah, please go on, Kwame, and tell us what should be. I mean, I can reflect in lots of things from what I grasped from my brothers, but yeah, because of time, you go on and tell us what our approach should be. And you always get the time pressure, Kwame, so work with it.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mallet, and my brother has made really very valid points, and also my brother Lansana has also spoken very well. Yeah, I do agree with him on his outlook when you are talking about how Museveni is operating. Yeah, I do agree that he on one side is doing consciously, but on the other side is unconscious. He's doing certain things unconsciously, because you see that sometimes someone may have a conflict, what they call conflict of interest. So the person wants to stay in power, okay, and maybe like someone like him who has been in power for like 35 years, he would like to see that he leaves behind something, okay, leaves something for the people in the country. And then on one side, he has to serve the interests of his masters, okay, who are the neo-colonialists that are oppressing his people. So you find that he has spent the biggest chunk of his life serving the interests of neo-colonialism, but around the end of what he's looking at as the end of his life, he wants to do something and leave something for his people. But already the things he has been doing, they have made neo-colonialism entrenched to a very large extent into the systems of the country, like I elaborated on the situation in Uganda, that the financial sector and manufacturing sector, construction sector, all these are controlled by foreigners, and it is just ironic to that to a very large extent. So one of the things I believe that we can do as a people, as we are here, I believe in things which we can do even when we get away from here, that if we continue to have these conversations I think it is very important, because for a very long time, and Malit, you are doing a very good job to have this platform that we come out and discuss these things. Because you may think that what you are doing as a discussion, like me and my brother Lansana here, we come here and discuss, and Lambert, that we are not doing a service to our continent, but we are doing a service to our continent, that one person may come and listen to us and understand, wow, this is how neo-colonialism works. This is what they call neo-colonialism. I didn't know anything about neo-colonialism. So is this neo-colonialism that they always talk about? So I think that when we get away, we need to continue this conversation. The African intellectuals, for a very long time, they have been absent from the scene, okay? That there's no, the continent has not had people to speak for it, to defend it, okay, to push out there what is the African alternative to neoliberalism? What is the African alternative to the Western way of life that is exploiting the land, indiscriminately? You have had the Chinese now, they have come out strongly on their media, platforms to defend the Chinese system. They have been coming out. You can talk of people like Professor Zhang Weiwei. You can talk of people like Eric Lee, who is a political scientist and a venture capitalist, on their networks. Their networks are out there, but where's the African intellectuals? So I think it is very important that we continue these discussions and then talk to each other and familiarize each other. And then the other thing which I'm looking at is that we need to be concerned about the affairs of the continent. Okay, all of us, whether you are my brother who is in Senegal, he needs to be concerned about what is happening in Congo. He needs to be concerned about what is happening in Zambia. He needs to be concerned about what is happening in Kenya. Okay, and it is the same thing. If I'm in Ghana, or I'm in Uganda, or I'm in South Africa, I should be concerned about what is happening in Senegal, because this land belongs to all of us. We are on the same land mass. Okay, so we have to be concerned about our continent. So if the neo-colonialists are putting a military base in Zambia, or they have a military base in Ghana, like how they have a military base in Kenya. So if you are in Senegal or Congo or Central African Republic, you have to be concerned, because these military bases are going to affect you. And the other people who are in these areas where they are putting the military bases, they are your people. They look like you, because all of us, when we go out of this continent and we go whether to France or Europe or Canada, nobody cares where we come from. They will just say that we are Africans. You are an African. This one is your brother. So I think this is an advantage. For us, that it helps us to come together. It should help us to come together to defend our continent and finish the unfinished business. So the unfinished business is the work which was started by our ancestors, people like Thomas Sankara and Marcus Garvey, people like Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. They started a certain work which was not finished. That is the unfinished business. So if we do not finish it, there's no any other person who's going to finish it. We have to stand in the gap. We have to stand strongly and push forward and say, this is our continent. We are going to fight for it. This continent belongs to us. The neo-colonialists, the United States and the Europeans and France and whoever, they cannot just come to Africa and behave how they want and move all over the continent, do whatever they want. This continent belongs to certain people. It has owners, and we are those owners. So we need to speak out. We need to demonstrate against these military bases and put up a deadline. The African Union itself, however dysfunctional it is as an organization, we have to push forward, because this organization was not created by these people who are existing here. This organization was created for us as by our forefathers who are Pan-Africanists, and their goal was to create a union government of African states. So we have to compel, we have to continuously force the hands of these people to act in our interests as an organization. And there is many things which we can do. We have, each of us have parliaments in our countries. We can write letters and reach out to these people. And the other thing which I can talk of is that as young people, I think we need to stay in our continent. I'm not saying those ones who have gone and they are trying to find a means, they should not be there. But I think that we need to stay in our continent. When we look at events that are going on in Europe, for example, they have, you see how they have been treating our people in Ukraine, countries like Ukraine, when the Ukraine crisis came on, how they have been mistreating our people. So the more we stay on this continent, is the more we will put pressure on the existing structure. And now the other our brothers who are outside, they will also be there and be able to support us when we are on the continent. So I'm speaking to those who are still on the continent, those my brothers and sisters who are still on the continent, that we need to stay here and then come together and dialogue and put pressure on this neo-colonial system. Because if we do not put pressure on this neo-colonial system, we cannot break it down. So the only way for us to break it down, the neo-colonial system, and throw it out, is if we are present on the continent, if we organize with our brothers who are in the diaspora and those our brothers who are staying abroad in those other countries, and we come together and continuously push to forward and put pressure on the system. I believe that this approach will help us very much to be able to bring about the new Africa that we want, and bring about to the unfinished business. We'll be able to finish the unfinished business of unifying the continent and rebuilding it, because before we unify our continent, we cannot even talk about rebuilding it. When you are talking about rebuilding, what is going on today, somebody will say, oh, what is going on today? Is it not rebuilding? But when we are talking about rebuilding a continent, we are talking about building the continent at the pace which you are seeing that is happening in China. In China, they are building 6,000 miles of motorway, 6,000 miles of motorway every year. So this is the rebuilding. They have high-speed trains which were started in 2007. And they have the biggest network of high-speed trains. So this is, when you are talking about rebuilding, this is the rebuilding. Right now, what is going on our continent is a joke. Is a pure joke that we are sitting down. We have leaders who are just sitting down, that they are waiting for foreign investment to come in before they will do anything. They are waiting. You have heard what we mentioned here, that some of them, they are always mentioning private sector. Okay, so they are mentioning these terms which don't mean anything, because they have been programmed either from outside, that the country, the government, which is elected by the people, it cannot do anything for its people. So they should wait for the private sector. Where is the African private sector? The people in Africa, they don't have that money to invest in structures. That is why they elected the government to take control of the resources. And you are telling us that is the private sector. So these terms that they throw around, and they say private sector, and they absolve themselves of the responsibility of developing the continent rapidly, is what we are talking about, that before we unify, we cannot start even a reconstruction. So that is the reconstruction that we are looking at, that we have to build our continent and say, in the next 30 years, like what China has done, in the next 20 years, we need to rapidly transform the continent from how it is looking. And we don't want to see any slum on the continent, but we have to work together. So we have to continuously mobilize ourselves. We have to continuously talk to each other. We have to talk to each other all over the continent, and we have to inform each other. We have to learn what is happening all over the continent for our own good, and for us to be able to network and then to attack the enemy when we have all this knowledge about our continent. So I want to thank you very much, Malet, for inviting me today.
Thank you very much, really, for those, listing out the approach, what it should be very important. Yeah, to take ownership is important. We have to start to act now. Just to read out some of, the comments here. Young Africans, don't ever give up. You must stand strong. That's African spiritualist. The loss, somebody is saying the loss of signal, real Zanzi actually, the loss of signals is not a coincidence. This has been done deliberately so that we can't spread our message. This happened also yesterday. Somebody from South Africa was telling me, and actually I was speaking with my brother Lansana today earlier. Also yesterday I had a live session with my Chadian brother to inform us what's happening in Chad, because since Sunday there is this demonstration on the street by the people. Then this morning YouTube tells me, no, we have you have violated. I mean, there is no violation. I have done, it's an original video, but I cannot even they made it private, and I can't even request it to make it public. So the struggle is
they have blocked it.
yeah, the struggle is really, but it's everywhere or in all levels. Somebody said the only way to win colonialism is by sword, praying and begging. The the West won't help. We have to fight for our rights. And then Talibe Sonko said, "Good job, case." Yeah. So yeah, we have taken enough time, so I don't want to add on this. But to say, somebody also asked, how can I help? I don't know if he's asking how can I help the channel or himself in order to achieve related to the topic. Then I think each one of us, if we are not under the civil society organization or something, or on media, it just doesn't matter. Let's be on our daily life, live that life that we are talking. Let's walk the talk. Be Pan-African. Think good. Everything you do, ask first, is it good for Africa? In any way, when you buy a shoes, it could be in teaching your siblings, your children, what kind of film, program you are exposing them. All these little things matters to build the continent in the future. We don't have to be necessarily in politics, but wherever we are individually in way of mobilizing or organization, we can do something. And thank you very much, my brothers. Really, I enjoyed, as I always say, when I sit behind this screen, I'm like other audience. I learn a lot, and yeah, I want to do this often. It's not only about Ethiopia or East Africa, I also want to learn, and that's what I want to bring to the people. We have to ask, we have to care what's happening in Senegal, what's happening in Burkina Faso, in Zambia. The president might do something, but what are the people saying? So yeah, thank you very much. What a blessing, to have you. It helped us not to give up, and we don't give up. We claim that organization, the African Union, and everything. Yeah. So have a blessed evening, unless there is a very, very last word. Yeah. Thank you. Yes, you wanted to say, somebody wanted to say?
Okay, no, I just want to have the link of your channel, please, because it's very interesting, and I want to have your phone number also, if possible. So we're gonna network and have some exchanges for the better of our fight.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. He has big you have to check him, Kwame. He has big followers when he does that. Oh my God, he will.
Yeah, of course.
He does A to Z about Senegal, and there are many thousands of people online watching him live, and I feel honored, and really, and my brother Kwame is doing a lot of things as well on his channel, on his writing, and contributing on different channels, really without reservation. It means a lot, and thank you for your humbleness.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
Thank
and
you.
let's empower, let's share. I do it. I will share the link as it is all these 2 hours, and then try to divide it by topic when you guys speak, and share that as well. Have a blessed evening, Kwame.
Thank you.
All right, and Lansana, bye.
All right, bye.
And also, brother Lambert, he will hear us. He will watch us later. Bye.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.